Hello everyone, so welcome back. In this lecture review we are going to be walking you through all that we did yesterday. So we started by clearly stating our goal, and understanding the fundamentals is key. Then we looked at a few bullet points of what we'll be covering. So let's jump right straight into Visual Studio Code and do exactly what we did in class. So I'm live here inside my VS Studio Code, and I'll encourage you to open a folder for this. For myself, I already have my own folder opened up in my desktop. So to access my folder, I'll move to this file. I'll click File. It's already opened, but I actually want to show you how to do that. Then I'll open Folder. Then I already have my folder, Learning CSS. Select my folder. So I have my folder, it's an empty folder. So the first thing I'll do is to create a new file, and you can either do that by clicking this particular icon. So you can just click here and say, on the first folder we'll be creating, I'll call it 01 underscore basic.html. So let me just get rid of this. So I already have my file opened here. I'll click it and I'll hit the exclamation key to get my boilerplate. So we're basically doing exactly what we did in class. I'll say basic CSS, or just as we did in class, I'll say CSS implementation. So I'll save it and I'll come right into my body tag and I'll say h1, I'll say hello world, and I'll have a duplicate of this, change it to h2, or you can just come down here and just say, let's get rid of this, just say h2, and I can just say hello everyone, then I'll have my h3, I'll say I'm a super villain, and then save this. So the next thing we'll have to do is to get it up and running via our live server. So you come down here and click to run live server. If you do not have your live server installed, come to this icon, click it, then come here, ensure that your internet is on, then you type live server. Once I don't have my internet on, but once you have keyed this in fact, let me turn my internet on and show you what should pop up. So I have my internet on now, and this is exactly what you should see when you click it. I already have mine installed, so I won't be clicking uninstall. So I'll get rid of this tab and we'll start. So I'll do Ctrl B to get rid of this, and I'll launch via live server. So I have my live server on and I have my Visual Studio Code here. So to implement CSS, in class we spoke about 3 approaches, and the first that we did was called inline CSS. So I'll come right here and I'll say inline CSS. To get this comment up, you just do Ctrl /. So, and to implement your CSS inline in your code, you can just go into any of the tags. For this one, we'll be going into the H1 tag, and we're going to say style, and inside the style we want to change the color of the text to red. So I'll say color red semicolon, and when I save that and reload my page, I shouldn't have reloaded this. I think it should have worked automatically, but then I have this H1 tag transformed into not like transformed, the color of the text was changed to red. So this is the first approach. It is called inline CSS. The next is called internal CSS, and in this case I'll come into my head See, I'm inside the head, so I'm inside here. Now come inside here and I'll say style. Then inside the style we'll be targeting the H2, so I'll say H2. Then I'll open up these curly brackets and I'll say color, I'll say green. And when I save that and reload it, it automatically appeared here. Wait guys, let me just make sure that this is working properly. So okay, I'll keep reloading it. I'll keep reloading it that way. So this is actually called, I'll come right underneath here and I'll say internal CSS. So before we continue, I'll open up this to actually, you know, give you an overview of what we just did, the CSS syntax. You know, we actually targeted the H2 element, which is actually the selector. We actually targeted it. Then the next thing that we saw was a curly bracket, which is the declaration, where the declaration actually started. Now we gave it a property of color. There are so many properties in CSS, and the value of the property, we said in our case we said green, but I used blue here. Then you have a semicolon, then the declaration actually ends with a curly bracket too. So take note of this structure. I also send this image to the group chat so everyone would, you know, in fact by the time we keep writing CSS, you get conversant with all this. So we're back to our Visual Studio Code, and the last way of implementing CSS is called the external CSS. And to do that, we need to create a new file. So let's all create a new file. I'll do Ctrl B and let me get rid of this. Then you see this little this icon. When you click it, we can call our file style.css. So we now have a CSS file. So let's jump right straight to our HTML file. So in this case, we're going to be targeting the H3, and I will come here and I'll say H3. This is actually our external CSS file. Open up the curly braces and I'll say color, let's say blue violet. And when I click it, I reload, but nothing happens. The reason is because in my HTML I have not linked. I need to link it, and I showed you guys that to link this we have to do link link href, and we'll say style did I spell that well? Style.css. Then I'll say rel, and I'll do this. I'll say style sheet, right? Then I'll close it up. But you could actually just come, let me comment this, you could actually come here and just say link, and it gives you a boilerplate of what you want to do. You just come here and put down your style.css and save it. So beneath this, I'll comment out and say external CSS and save my file. And when I come right here and I reload, you see the color has changed. So this was the first lesson we did. So let's move to the next lesson. For the next item, we'll come right here and say and create a new file. We'll call it selector.html, and let's say selectors, since we are going to be discussing about the two selectors. Then we'll come right here, exclamation, and we'll change our title to CSS selectors. Ctrl D to get rid of this. Then we'll save, and we actually open with live server. So we actually have nothing inside here. So the first thing we are going to do is let's create two divs. So I'll say div, and you know we did it together in class. We're going to say div with an ID of welcome. So they're all in small letters, ID of welcome, and inside the div I'm going to have an h2 with a class of heading, of primary heading. Then inside here I'll say welcome, and I'll have like lorem 20. So you saw how we did it together. To create an ID, I said we're going to do that one more time again. So I want to create another div. I'll say div, or you could just say hash about, and you just hit enter, and you come here and say an h2 with a class of primary heading 2. So inside it I'll say about, then I'll come right here and say lorem 20. When I save that, it automatically appears here. Now these two selectors, let's give some comments here. In CSS we actually have two selectors. We have the classes, we have the class and IDs, and this is an ID, this is a class. Now the difference between an ID and a class is, I told you that an ID is like a unique identifier. Like, we can only but have one ID with like a particular name. Like this div's identifier can only but have one welcome, but we can have so many primary heading. In fact, I can come right down here and just have a paragraph with a class of primary heading. But I can't, maybe inside here I'll say lorem 5, but I can't have this ID any longer. This one right here, I can't have this identifier of welcome. Maybe come down here and say h1 with an ID of identifier, with an ID of welcome. Sorry guys, no, I can't do this any longer because I already have it up here. So hope you get the point. But I can have as many primary heading as I want. So I can have so many classes with the same name, but I can only have one identifier, just like this identifier called about. I can only have one identifier called about. Hope you all get the point. So let's style up and see how to style these CSS selectors. So we're going to be using the internal CSS, which we learned that to apply that we have to do that inside our head. So I'll say CSS, then I'll come here and say style, then inside let's target this identifier. And to style an ID, you use hash. To target this ID, you just say hash welcome. This is the identifier's name, and I'll come right here and I'll say color, let's say BG color, background, let's say background color, let's say red, and this actually targeted div, the entire div. And let's say color, let's say white. Now we actually targeted this identifier, and we've all observed that this identifier is actually a div. So everything inside the div would pick, would actually pick the color. Everything inside the div will pick the color. So let's also target the second one. We can say about, we can say background color, and we'll say blue, then text color, can say white. Now the last thing we're going to do is to style these class names, and observe something. The class names, this text here, this h2 text, and this h2 text, and this paragraph content here, they all share one class name, which is primary heading. So I'll copy this, and to style a class you do dots, but to style a div you do hash. So I'll do dots, the class name, then I'll say font size. Let's change the font size to 20 pixels. So you see that all the font size is actually adjusted. Let's say 30 pixels. You see, it only affected welcome, about, and lorem. Let's change their colors to black. Let's say color black. You see, just 1 2 3, this is already black. Let's make it let's change the font size to 40. So you see, just these guys were affected because the three of them are sharing a particular class name. I hope this became clearer with this brief lecture review. I just want you to understand one thing. Let me have a brief recap. When I want to, let's have a comment here. Let's say to style ID, we use let's say an hash before the ID name. Then I'll come right here and I'll say to style a class we use dots before the class name. I hope this made sense, but I assured you guys we'll keep working on projects, and the more we keep getting our hands dirty, you get to see the big picture. So I hope to see you pumped up and feeling excited in the next class. Get your hands dirty. We have so many websites you can learn from, like W3 schools, and I wish you all the best. Remember what class is the goal, and do have a wonderful Tuesday.